Thanks for waiting. Ms. Marst's previous injuries, which resulted in extensive hypertrophic scarring, made my job a lot more challenging than I'd expected. I'm sorry if I've slowed you down any. Just because something walks like a duck and quacks like a duck doesn't mean we shouldn't assume it's a duck. The massive amounts of morphine found in the victim's system would lead one to expect death by overdose-related causes, and I did determine Ms. Marst's cause of death to be asphyxia due to morphine intoxication. Because the extensive scar tissue in Ms. Marst's lungs was hypertrophic, it took a little while for me to distinguish the morphine as the root cause of the asphyxia, as opposed to a more general catastrophic failure of the respiratory system due to her persistent condition.
Is it just me, Doc, or did this autopsy take a little longer than usual?
Well, Nick, it's just been a while since I examined a body with such severely burned tissues that hadn't been a contributing factor to COD. I estimate time of death to be somewhere around 11 p.m. last night. The problem I had with this one is, if you take a good look at the muscular atrophy, it presents like advanced rigor. These pressure ulcers and skin abrasions also led to some initial confusion over the degree of livor mortis. And finally, once I got Ms. Marst's medical records and saw she'd stopped eating solid food about 3 months ago, I knew I couldn't use any partially digested food to help set her time of death.
Man, you weren't kidding when you said this one was challenging.
Yeah, but that's what keeps the spark alive in this job. It's a good question, and I have no answer for you. Now, in a situation like this, where such a high dose of morphine is involved, I look for signs of cadaveric spasm. Because when voluntary muscles are deprived of oxygen due to, say, strenuous activity, these muscles tend to seize up perimortem, and indications of cadaveric spasming, let's say in the hands or arms, would tend to suggest the victim was in the midst of a struggle around the time of death, and I looked for such indications. When I got the full tox report back, it seemed to me that the level of morphine in her system was so toxic, it probably caused her to slip very quickly into an unconscious state just prior to the total collapse of lungs. So, absent any indication of cadaveric spasm, I concluded your victim's voluntary muscles were not engaged in any such strenuous activity perimortem. The more important point here is that whether this was a deliberate act of murder or an assisted suicide, Mary Marst's death was the result of a homicide. No, it would have been impossible. Her medical records indicate Ms. Marst sustained multiple near-fatal injuries in a car crash. Apparently, she actually inhaled burning fuel, which obviously severely and permanently damaged her vocal cords. Sure, I collected them for you, as usual. Anything I can do, feel free to take a closer look at the body yourself. Oh, almost forgot. There's a shard of some kind embedded in the back of her left hand. I left it for you to collect. Scar tissue here is extensive, as well as hypertrophic. That's the shard I told you about.
Looks like an acetone and some hydrogen cyanide combined into fibers of an ethyl methacrylate monomer and bonded with a similar but complex polymer of transparent thermoplastic. It's a tiny piece of a cosmetic fingernail. I wonder, when was the last time Nurse Lou had her nails done? Nurse Lou, we have something else we'd like to ask you.
Yes? Yes, of course.
Thank you for coming in voluntarily, Miss Barrett.
Certainly. Anything I can do to help discover what happened. To be honest with you, I'm uncomfortable with her appearance. She's trashy. She wears that nurse's uniform more like a stripper than a caregiver. However, John seems to think she does a good job, and Mary approved of her.
Thank you for your cooperation, Miss Barrett. We may have some more questions for you at a later time, if that's all right with you.
No, not at all. Please don't hesitate to contact me.
It's a match. That bronze trace we found in the broken regulator pieces came from that bronze bust of Frank Mars. The evidence suggests someone took the bust from the front room and used it to break open the regulator. Then they removed the morphine control inside. Then the murderer pushed the button on the regulator to give Mary an overdose of morphine. If Mary was awake, she would have been forced to lie there and see it all happen, helpless. Something about this nurse's story isn't sitting well with me. How about you? We have to make sure we can corroborate it with the evidence.
What evidence do you have? What do you got in the way of evidence? What if we do this? I'll talk to the nurse. See if she might be willing to come down here voluntarily to answer some questions. Maybe we'll get lucky.
Nurse Lou, we appreciate you coming down here voluntarily to answer some questions.
You're welcome. I don't think there's any more I can tell you, but I'd like to help you if I can. These? Yes, they are. That's odd. Oh, but you know I did get a nail tip put on my index finger when the real one broke last week. It's been on my hand all week, so I guess I kind of forgot about it. But you can see it's not chipped or anything. I don't know for sure. I do know there's an area down by Lake Merritt where the family keeps their boat, and Mr. Barrett, he likes to go down there when he wants to be by himself. Given what's happened, I wouldn't be surprised if he's there now. Mr. Barrett would tell Mary about the boat in the lake and how it was the only real place in the world he could find any peace. He and Mary spent a lot of time together. He would sit there beside her and carry on a conversation as if she were talking right back to him. I wasn't eavesdropping, I just couldn't help but overhear their talks. Or his talking, that is. Mr. Barrett is my employer. He pays me to provide home care for his sister. Honestly, I can't say I really know Miss Barrett. When she came to visit, she would seem uncomfortable. But seeing someone you love in the condition Miss Mars was in, well, it's very, very difficult. So I tried not to take anything personally.
Thank you, nurse. We may call you in if more questions come up.
I understand.
That must be our man. Right where Mary's nurse said he'd be. No one will ever accuse you of not being thorough. I'd say you might be overdoing it a little bit, but it never hurts to practice, right? Good idea. We can use the microscope to compare the mold against any prints we find. John Barrett, we're with the Las Vegas Crime Lab.
Okay. Do you think I'm gonna need my lawyer?
We're looking into the death of Mary Marst, and we'd like to ask you some questions.
I didn't do it. What else do you need to know? I'm gonna let you in on a little family secret. We have a real problem with authority, unless we're invested in it. So any more questions you have, save them for each one of my lawyers. My opinion? I think you're wasting your time, and mine. My sister's gone, and your investigation isn't gonna change that. You know what? That's really none of your business. Sister. Mary was my sister. Even though our mothers were different, that didn't matter. And Mary was the only real member of my family I had left. She's gone. What the hell are you trying to insinuate? Mary was a fighter. Most people just lose their will to live. Not Mary. She was an inspiration. Yeah, give me a call. We'll grab a drink or something.
The size and the tread patterns match. Our suspect was wearing these shoes. We need to talk to Brass.
What evidence do you have? This is good. We can get a warrant to search the kid's room with this. Problem we have now is it's Sunday, which means the judge is indisposed on one of several possible golf courses. I'll have to chase him down to get the warrant to search John Barrett's room. Why don't you head back to the lab? I'll call you when I have it.
You recognize him? This is a statue of St. Ambrose, patron saint of beekeepers. The statue belongs to Beatrice Salazar. At least it belonged to her back in 1982. That dried blood there belonged to her husband, Miami drug lord Humberto Salazar. The theory goes Humberto Salazar fell in love with a beautiful teenage prostitute he plucked off the streets of Mexico City. She got the house, the car, and the drug empire. He got St. Ambrose to the head. At the time, nobody could find any physical evidence to tie Salazar to her husband's murder, but obviously, we've come a long way since 1982. And that's where you guys come in. Salazar's grandstanding when she showed up the other day was just for show. Her DNA has been on file for a while.
What are these white, pasty flecks?
adhesive from an evidence locker sticker. I just need you guys to pull her DNA off this statue. And if you can, that's the ball game. We've got her for murder.
Petroleum oil with a very low ash content. Looks like the type of two-stroke oil you'd use in jet skis. Good job, partner. You proved that pool of motor oil is absolutely a pool of motor oil. Nice job. Now let's run the sample.
Wait, what's going on?
I'm not sure. Somehow, proteins got denatured, cooked.
They're useless. Son of a bitch. What the hell happened?
It doesn't make any sense.
And I'm going to make a formal request to the deputy director and to your sheriff that an investigation be immediately conducted into this CSI's possible malfeasance. Mr. Stokes, I would suggest you take this matter into your own hands before it brings down this entire lab. Tell me something. Are you just incompetent, or did you just deliberately destroy potential evidence?
I know this sounds crazy, but I think Agent Huntby set us up. I think he deliberately set us up so that we would consume that potential DNA sample in analysis. And he wanted us to take the fall for it. Catherine, we got to get our hands back on that statue. We need to analyze whatever traces on it, and we have to figure out what the hell's going on with Huntby.
Lumpy just left the building, and he took the statue with him. I'll notify the FBI field office. See if they can help us. I think Nick is right. And I'll do everything in my power to get that statue back here and have you retested. But until we can get this thing totally resolved, I think it's best for the credibility of the lab if I keep you off any cases pertaining to Beatrice Salazar. I understand you have another case you're handling right now. I recommend the two of you keep working on it. So, walk me through this again.
Okay. We used a moderate concentration of sodium lauryl sulfate to lyse the cell walls.
Okay. Cell walls open up, allowing us to extract the genetic material inside and prepare it for DNA analysis.
Exactly. Except this time, for some reason, there was a much higher concentration of SLS than we normally use. So when the sample was hydrated in preparation for our DNA analysis, the water and the high concentration of SLS produced a chemical reaction that gave off enough heat to raise the temperature of the water way above 80 degrees Celsius.
Which would have denatured the protein and destroyed the viability of the sample. Agent Huntby is claiming you incorrectly prepared the lysing solution by adding too much SLS.
Catherine, with all due respect to Agent Huntby, I was standing right there when it all went down. The solution was prepared correctly. Now, as we were swabbing the sample, I did notice a trace amount of some sort of pasty substance on the back of the statue. So I asked Agent Huntby about it, and he said it was just some glue residue from an identification tag.
You know, you can create a paste with sodium lauryl sulfate, concentrated enough to have that reaction when hydrated.
It's Brass. I finally tracked down the judge and got him to review and sign our search warrant for John Barrett's bedroom. It's a go.
Brass had a hell of a time getting this search warrant. Let's not waste it. Stay sharp. This guy may be rich, but lucky for us, he obviously doesn't pay for a daily maid service. That's what we have here. Cosmetic fingernail, which looks as though it's fallen off, and taken a bit of the real nail with it. First of the job, right? The man likes his shoes. Blood on the shoes looks like it hasn't dried. It's fresh. That sample may allow us to positively identify who the nail belongs to. Dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. Hopefully, we'll be able to recover some usable DNA. No fluids here. No fluids here. No fluids here. Tiny piece of a cosmetic fingernail. Matching an unknown to an unknown like that doesn't tell us much. Have we processed all of our evidence as thoroughly as we can? Seems like we might have a test or two to run.